You know, when we think of Robinson Crusoe, we picture the ultimate survivor, right? The guy who gets shipwrecked and masters the wilderness. But what if I told you that story is just the surface? What if this book is actually the blueprint for a brand new kind of person, the original capitalist?
Yeah, what if the whole survival thing is a bit of a misdirection? What if the real story is about rebellion, about colonialism, and about the sheer, raw ambition to build an empire of one? Well, today, we are going to dig into the hidden ideology of one of the most famous books ever written.
All right, so let's start at the beginning. And surprisingly, the story doesn't kick off with a shipwreck. It actually begins with a rebellion. Crusoe's very first and maybe most important decision is to totally defy his father and the cozy middle-class life he's got all mapped out for him.
So, Crusoe's dad is basically laying out the classic bourgeois dream. He's saying, look, son, the sweet spot is the middle. It's the best place to be. You're not struggling like the poor, but you're also not dealing with all the crazy ambition and anxiety of the super rich. It's the perfect safe harbor, the happy medium.
And Crusoe? He wants absolutely none of it. He completely rejects this idea of safety and contentment. And his choice, really, it shows this massive clash right at the heart of capitalism itself. You've got his dad, who represents that cautious side. Secure your wealth, play it safe. But Crusoe, he's the other side of that coin. He is that restless, go-getter spirit, just driven by this bottomless hunger for more.
And this is the core of his big mistake. See, back then, in the Puritan way of thinking, your father was basically God's manager on earth. So by blowing off his dad, Crusoe is also, in effect, blowing off God. It's a huge deal. This one act of rebellion is framed as his original sin, and pretty much everything that happens to him from this point on is seen as his punishment for it.
Okay, so this sin of his throws him into his very first adventure, way before he ever sees the famous island. He gets captured, he's enslaved, and it's right here, in this experience, that the book starts to lay out the basic logic of colonial power.
And check out this hypocrisy. The second he escapes being a slave, what does he do? He becomes a slave master. It's instantaneous. For himself, freedom is this absolute non-negotiable right. But for Xury, the young boy who helped him escape, for him, freedom is suddenly just a privilege, and it's one that Crusoe can revoke whenever he feels like it.
And just look at how he justifies this. It's incredible. He literally sells Xury, but he spins the whole thing as if he's doing the kid a favor. The deal is, Xury will be free in 10 years. But there's a catch. Only if he becomes a Christian. So you see what's happening? Cold, hard economic exploitation is being dressed up to look like moral salvation. And that, right there, is the colonial playbook in a nutshell.
Okay, now we're getting to the main event, the island. And here's the thing. The shipwreck is not just some random tragic accident. No, in the logic of the story, it's the perfect setup. It's a controlled environment, almost like a laboratory, designed to test the true power of that capitalist spirit and build a whole new world from zero.
What's wild is that right before the shipwreck, Crusoe had actually made it. He had a successful plantation in Brazil. He had achieved the exact stable life his father begged him to pursue. But it wasn't enough for him. He had this, quote, immoderate desire of rising faster, which is what puts him on a slave trading ship. He's repeating his original sin of ambition all over again. So when the shipwreck happens, it's framed as a totally just punishment.
So he washes up on the island, and for a minute, he's totally freaking out, running about like a madman. But his breakdown lasts for like 5 seconds. He immediately pivots from raw terror to this cold, rational thought. Okay, what's next? And why the quick turnaround? Well, for a Puritan, despair isn't just sadness. It's a spiritual sin. The real way to show your faith, the true form of worship, is to work, to get stuff done. This is the Protestant work ethic, pure and simple.
So, as he's scavenging things from the shipwreck, he stumbles upon a bunch of money. And he knows, intellectually, that it's completely worthless here. But he can't help himself. He smiles. And this tiny reaction, it's one of the most revealing moments in the whole book. It gets at a really fundamental economic idea.
The reason he smiles is because the island has stripped everything down to the basics. It reveals this core economic truth about the difference between use value and exchange value. See, money is the ultimate symbol of exchange value. Its worth is based on a social system. But on the island, it has zero use value. You can't eat it, you can't build a hut with it. In his new reality, a single nail is, without a doubt, way more valuable than a pile of gold coins.
And yet, what does he do? He takes the money anyway. It's pure instinct. He just can't bring himself to leave it. And that one action tells you everything. It shows just how deeply the mindset of a market society is burned into his brain. Even when it is objectively totally useless, he cannot let go of the ultimate symbol of wealth.
So, he's got his physical survival sorted out. He's building things, he's got food. But he quickly realizes that's not enough. He hits a wall, a really deep crisis of meaning, and it's going to force him to totally rebuild his entire spiritual outlook.
See, his first real crisis on the island isn't about food or shelter, it's about despair. All his hard work answered the how of survival, but now he's staring down the terrifying question of why. Why bother? Why survive just to die all alone on what he starts calling the island of despair? His practical, industrious mindset can build him a fortress, sure, but it can't give him a reason to live in it.
This whole existential dread actually hits him physically. He gets a terrible fever. And while he's sick and vulnerable, he has this horrifying dream. He's convinced it's a direct message from God, an ultimatum, basically. And that vision just shatters him. It forces him to stop seeing his situation as just bad luck and to start seeing it as a direct punishment for his sinful life.
And this right here is the absolute turning point of his story. He basically rewrites his own history. He stops thinking of himself as a victim, some poor guy who just had bad luck. Instead, he sees himself as a sinner who was rightly punished, but then mercifully saved. The shipwreck is no longer a random disaster. In his new story, it was a deliberate act of God, an intervention designed to save his soul.
So now he's got this powerful new sense of purpose, right? But here's the twist. His newfound faith doesn't lead him to sit around and pray all day. Oh no, it unleashes an absolute explosion of productivity, and it all ends with him declaring himself the king of the island.
But how does a regular guy just decide he's a king? Well, for Crusoe, it's a pretty logical process. Step 1, he works the land. He mixes his labor with it, and in his mind, that means he's earned ownership. Step 2, he believes all his productive work is God's will. After all, God put him there to do it. So now his ownership is divinely legitimized. And that leads to step 3, absolute authority. If he's the divinely appointed owner and ruler, then any rebellion against him isn't just treason, it's blasphemy. He's created a whole new kind of divine right, based on work and faith, not royal blood.
And just like that, the island becomes the ultimate capitalist fantasy. I mean, think about it. It's a world overflowing with untapped natural resources. The labor force is just one person, him. And best of all, zero competition. He has a total monopoly. This setup allows for completely unlimited, unchallenged growth. And believe me, he goes after it with everything he's got.
So for years, he's building this perfect, orderly little kingdom. But then, he faces a second great crisis. And this one might be even bigger than the first. It's a moment that threatens to bring his entire, carefully constructed world crashing down around him. So let's just picture this for a second. After all this time, he has achieved total, absolute control. His fortress is built and secure, his crops are planted and growing on schedule. He even has a calendar to order his days. He is the undisputed master of a silent, predictable, and totally empty universe. And then he sees it. And this one single footprint is more terrifying to him than the storm that nearly killed him. But why? Well, think about it. When he first washed ashore, he had nothing. He had nothing to lose. But now he has an entire kingdom to lose. This footprint isn't just a sign of another person, it's an ideological bomb. It's the invasion of chaos, the unknown, the other, into the perfect, orderly, religious, and economic world he has so carefully built. His entire world, his entire identity as king was built on being completely alone and having absolute control. That footprint shatters the illusion. It proves he is not alone. And that brings us to the ultimate question for his whole project. Robinson built a kingdom of one. So what happens when a subject finally arrives?